Daniel Hart was just a quiet man with a simpler life, a single dad running a second-hand bookstore in a sleepy coastal town, raising his son with patience and love. But everything changed the night he found a lost little girl wandering the docks in the rain. She didn't know her last name, she didn't know where she came from, but something about her tugged at Daniel's heart. As days turn into weeks, Daniel uncovers clues. This girl isn't just lost. She's from a world of unimaginable wealth, and someone powerful wants her back. When the girl's identity is revealed, it rocks Daniel's world. Enter Cassandra Vale, glamorous, ruthless, and one of the richest women in the country. She's not just the girl's mother. She's Daniel's former flame and the child. She might just be his. What follows is a battle of hearts, headlines, and hidden secrets, as a humble man faces off against a billionaire to protect the child who's become family. But Cassandra isn't telling the whole truth, and when it finally comes out, it will shock them all. The salty breeze blew in from the harbor, rattling the windows of Hart and Page's, the cozy little bookstore tucked between a cafe and a shuttered bait shop. Daniel Hart glanced up from the counter as a gust pushed the old wooden door open, just enough to jingle the bell, then closed again with a creak. It was late afternoon, and the sky had begun to smear itself in the bruised tones of an oncoming storm. "Looks like rain," he muttered, more to himself than to his 12-year-old son, Eli, who sat cross-legged near the fiction aisle, buried in an old copy of Treasure Island. Eli grunted in response, barely looking up. Daniel smiled. He admired how deeply his son could lose himself in stories, an escape Daniel himself had once clung to in younger years when life had been harder and less forgiving. The shop was nearly empty. It had been a quiet day, as most were, and Daniel liked it that way. The small town of Windermere Bay didn't change much. People came in for books, coffee, and conversation. He wasn't rich, but he was content. His world was steady, his responsibilities clear. Raise Eli, keep the shop alive, stay out of trouble. But trouble has a way of walking in without knocking. It was just after sunset when the storm rolled in harder. The rain pelted the windows in sudden sheets, and Daniel stepped outside to pull in the sidewalk sign before it got soaked. That's when he saw her. A little girl, no more than 5 or 6 years old, stood on the edge of the sidewalk, soaked to the skin. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, and her pale blue dress was smeared with mud. She clutched a stuffed bunny so tight its fabric looked strained. But it was her eyes that froze him, wide, uncertain, and full of something Daniel recognized all too well: fear. He approached slowly, kneeling down. "Hey, sweetie, are you okay?" She didn't respond. "What's your name?" Still nothing. She blinked, rain trickling down her cheeks, like tears. Daniel glanced around, no adults nearby, no frantic parents calling her name, no car waiting at the curb. "Are you lost?" he asked gently. This time she gave a small nod. That was all he needed. "Come on," he said, offering his hand. "Let's get you inside. You're freezing." She hesitated for a heartbeat, then slipped her tiny fingers into his. Back inside the store, Eli looked up, startled. "Who's that?" "I don't know yet," Daniel replied, "but I think she needs our help." He wrapped the girl in a towel from the back room, made her a cup of hot chocolate from the break area, and let her sit by the heater. She still didn't speak. Not her name, not where she lived. Just silence. The kind that wraps around a child like armor. Daniel called the local sheriff's office to report the situation, but the dispatcher explained that a team would come by later. It was a rough night, and most units were out on storm-related calls. He hung up, looking back at the girl. Eli sat beside her now, offering her a comic book. She didn't take it, but she didn't move away either. "Is she okay?" Eli whispered. "I don't know," Daniel said, "but we'll keep her safe until someone comes." That night, Daniel made up the pull-out couch in the reading nook. He told the girl she could sleep there if she wanted. She nodded again, and after a quiet dinner, curled up without a word. Eli sat nearby, flipping through a graphic novel by the light of a small lamp. As Daniel turned out the lights and locked the door, he paused to watch her. She looked so small, barely a wrinkle under the blanket, her bunny clutched tightly to her chest. He didn't know where she came from or who she belonged to, but somehow he already felt responsible. Something told him this wasn't just an accident, not just a child wandering away. Something deep down told Daniel that this little girl had arrived in his life for a reason. He just didn't know yet how much she was about to change everything. Daniel barely slept that night. The wind howled, the rain lashed the windows, and his thoughts churned like the ocean outside. Downstairs, the girl, still a mystery, slept curled up on the pull-out couch. She hadn't said a single word, but somehow she didn't need to. Her eyes, wide and haunted, spoke volumes. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving puddles glinting in the gray dawn. Daniel made breakfast, oatmeal with a drizzle of honey, and brought a bowl to the girl. She sat up slowly, still clutching her bunny. "I made you something," he said, careful not to overwhelm her. "Warm and sweet." She stared at the bowl, then slowly took it in her hands and began to eat in small, deliberate spoonfuls. Eli appeared with tousled hair and a sleepy yawn, rubbing his eyes as he dropped beside her. "You hungry too?" Daniel asked. "I could eat," Eli mumbled, eyeing the girl with curiosity. "Does she talk?" Daniel shook his head. "Not yet, but she listens." They spent the day together in the shop. Daniel posted a notice to the local sheriff's board and called the nearest children's center, but the storm had caused communication delays. No one had yet reported a missing girl matching her description. Social services promised to follow up within 48 hours. In the meantime, she stayed. Daniel kept her close, cautious but gentle. He tried giving her books with big pictures. She looked at them quietly, occasionally pointing at animals or colors. When he asked her name again, she opened her mouth slightly, then closed it and shook her head. "She doesn't remember," Eli guessed. "She's like those kids in movies who forget everything when something bad happens." Daniel didn't dismiss it. Trauma could do that. He'd seen it himself once when his late wife, Eli's mother, passed away suddenly. Eli hadn't spoken for 2 weeks. The girl stayed another night, then another. Each morning she grew a little less guarded. She began following Daniel around the store. She reached for his hand when crossing the street. She helped Eli stack books. She smiled, just barely, when Eli made funny voices while reading. "She's like part of us now," Eli said on the 3rd day, matter of fact, "like we adopted her." Daniel laughed softly. "Easy, Tiger. We're just helping until the right people show up." But the truth gnawed at him. No one was looking, no calls, no news. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere. That night, Daniel tucked her into the pull-out couch again and whispered, "You're safe here, okay? No matter what happened before." She nodded slowly, and for the first time she whispered something back. "Bunny's name is Pebbles." It wasn't her name, but it was a start. A week passed. Daniel tried to keep things steady. He taught a children's book club in the store's back room and let the girl, who he'd begun calling Luna, after Eli insisted she looked like a moon child, join in. She drew constantly now, Every hour, Luna would sit quietly with crayons and blank paper. At first, it was stick figures and houses. Then her drawings grew more complex: jets, chandeliers, marble floors, spiral staircases. She colored gold lines into necklaces and high-heeled shoes. Daniel noticed. "These don't look like things she'd see around here," he told Eli after closing up shop. "They're too specific." Eli leaned over the sketches. "This one has a swimming pool on the roof. That's not normal, right?" Daniel nodded. Something didn't add up. Luna had no memory of her name, but she was drawing the world of the wealthy, not cartoons, details. She even shaded in security cameras and designer handbags. He contacted a child psychologist through a friend and scheduled a casual play-based assessment. The therapist, Dr. Myers, was gentle and kind. Luna didn't resist. After the session, Dr. Myers pulled Daniel aside. "This girl isn't from a working-class home. I'd guess she's from a high-income, perhaps even elite background. But she's afraid, hyper-vigilant." "Afraid of what?" Daniel asked. "Not what," she said carefully. "Who?" A local news reporter visited the store 2 weeks after Luna arrived. He was doing a fluff piece on community kindness after the storm and had heard about Daniel's act of goodwill. Daniel tried to decline, but the reporter insisted. It would help if Luna's image went public, might bring someone forward. Daniel agreed on one condition: no last names, and Luna's face slightly obscured. The story aired that night. The next morning, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Dozens of people claimed to recognize Luna. Most were hoaxes. A few were leads, but none checked out. Then the call came from a blocked number. "I know who she is," the woman's voice said. Calm, cold, certain. Daniel's heart pounded. "She's my daughter." The woman refused to give her name, but her assistant emailed a formal notice within hours. Her name was Cassandra Vale, CEO of Vale Industries, recently profiled in Forbes, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. Her jet would be arriving the next morning. Eli looked up from the email with wide eyes. "Billionaire, like legit billionaire?" Daniel stared at the screen. "Looks like it." As rain began to fall again outside, Daniel looked at Luna playing with Eli and whispered to himself, "What the hell have we walked into?" The morning air was heavy with mist as the town buzzed about the impending arrival. News had spread quickly. Cassandra Vale, billionaire business mogul, was flying into Windermere Bay, a private jet, armed security, the works. Daniel tried to act unfazed as he wiped down the counter at the bookstore. Eli was less composed, bouncing with nerves as he peeked out the window every few minutes. Luna, oddly serene, played with pebbles in the children's corner, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the whirlwind heading their way. At precisely 10:07 a.m., a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up in front of the shop. The door opened, and out stepped a woman whose very presence seemed to alter the oxygen in the room. Tall, elegant, and dressed in a tailored white coat, Cassandra Vale surveyed the store like it was a property acquisition. Her heels clicked against the wooden floor like a countdown. Daniel stood up to meet her. "Ms. Vale, I presume?" "Mr. Hart," she said, shaking his hand with a grip both icy and controlled. Her eyes flicked past him to Luna. Luna froze. Pebbles dropped to the floor. "My daughter," Cassandra whispered, her voice breaking slightly. For the cameras or for real, Daniel couldn't tell. He knelt beside Luna. "Sweetheart, this lady says she's your mom. Do you remember her?" Luna didn't move. Cassandra stepped forward. "Her name is Luann Vale. She went missing during a family retreat in Aspen 3 weeks ago. I didn't report it immediately because, well, it's complicated." "Complicated?" Daniel asked, skeptical. She was alone, scared, and soaking wet. Cassandra's jaw tightened. "My ex-husband has a history. I feared he took her again. I didn't trust the police to help." That explanation barely made sense, but Daniel said nothing. Cassandra crouched to Luna's level and reached out. "Come, darling, let's go home." Luna stepped behind Daniel, grabbing his shirt. Cassandra stood slowly, seething. "She's my child." "And she's terrified of you," Daniel replied, keeping calm. "I'm not saying she can't go with you, but maybe we ease into it." Her gaze turned calculating. "I don't need permission. I have custody, and you have no legal grounds to hold her." "But I do have public opinion," Daniel said, tilting his head toward the reporters assembling outside. Cassandra blinked. "So you want something. Is it money?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "I want her to feel safe. That's it." Cassandra stared at him long and hard. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" She leaned in, her voice low and venomous. "She's yours, Daniel. Luna is your daughter." The world slowed. Daniel's heart stopped mid-beat as Cassandra's words sank in. "She's yours." It felt impossible, absurd, a trap, and yet Cassandra stood calm, controlled, as if she had been waiting for this moment to detonate everything. "You and I," she continued, "crossed paths nearly 7 years ago. Charity Gala, Napa Valley. We spent a weekend together. I didn't tell you. I had my reasons." Daniel could barely speak. "That was a long time ago." "She was conceived that weekend," Cassandra said. "I raised her alone. It was simpler that way." "Then why tell me now?" he asked, voice hard. "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you are, whether you'd fight for her, care for her." She softened ever so slightly. "You did." Daniel shook his head, overwhelmed. "And this little game, letting her get lost?" "She ran away," Cassandra said defensively. "She's spirited like me, but when I saw her with you on the news, I realized something." "What?" "She doesn't fear you. She trusts you." A silence hung between them. "DNA?" Daniel asked. Cassandra reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a certified report. DNA testing. Daniel Hart, 99.9% biological match to Luann Vale. Daniel sat down slowly, the floor shifting under his feet. "She's my daughter." Cassandra nodded. "I want to co-parent properly, but under my terms." He looked up, fire returning to his voice. "No, if I'm her father, I get a say. She belongs in a world I can give her. She belongs where she feels safe." They stood at a stalemate, 2 lives now bound by 1 child, caught between power and peace. Daniel spent the night on the bookstore's roof, staring at the stars, trying to breathe. He thought about Eli's first steps, about the long nights and scraped knees, about Luna's quiet trust, the way she now said good night with a whisper and a hug. And now he knew why it all felt so natural. She was his. In the days that followed, Cassandra didn't push for immediate separation. Perhaps her PR team advised caution. Perhaps she was calculating, but she offered an arrangement. Supervised visits, alternating days. She rented out the top floor of the Windermere Grand Hotel, hired a child therapist, and brought in a nanny. Daniel wasn't impressed. He consulted a lawyer, a single mother named Janine Crowley, who specialized in custody cases. She was blunt. "Cassandra's got money, media, and momentum. But you've got the girl's heart, and that's powerful in court. Do I even stand a chance? Janine smiled. Depends how much you're willing to fight. Luna, meanwhile, was caught in the emotional riptide. She became quiet again, confused and withdrawn. She clung to Eli, cried after time with Cassandra, and began sleepwalking, murmuring about big houses and being left again. Daniel sat beside her one night and promised, no matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. Because now she wasn't just a little girl who'd wandered into his life. She was his daughter, and he'd fight for her with everything he had. The courtroom was nothing like Daniel imagined. It wasn't grand or imposing. It was sterile, fluorescent, and cold. But its atmosphere pulsed with tension, as if everyone inside could feel the weight of what was at stake. Daniel sat beside Janine Crowley, palms damp, heart pounding. On the other side, Cassandra Vale looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, immaculate, calm, unbothered. Her high-powered legal team took up half the front row. The judge, a graying woman with sharp eyes and a stern voice, began the hearing by acknowledging the unique and high-profile nature of this case. Outside, reporters clustered near the courthouse steps, broadcasting the battle of the billionaire versus the bookseller. Inside, it was about something far simpler and infinitely more important. Luna. The first few hours were brutal. Cassandra's lawyers painted Daniel as an unstable single parent with no financial means to support a child, let alone one with specific emotional and developmental needs. They implied the bookstore was a failing business and hinted at emotional manipulation of the girl. Janine struck back calmly and methodically. She introduced video clips of Luna laughing with Eli, sketches she drew of her family, and psychological assessments confirming Daniel's presence made her feel safe. But the moment that turned the courtroom came unexpectedly. Luna herself took the stand. It was a rare decision, one Janine had opposed at first, but the child psychologist vouched for Luna's ability to speak on her own behalf. She sat in the big chair, her feet swinging, clutching pebbles in one hand. Her voice was soft but clear. "When I was with my mom," she began, "I had big rooms and toys and shiny clothes, but I felt lonely." The courtroom hushed. "When I was lost, I was scared, but Mr. Daniel made me feel okay, and Eli read me stories, and they waited outside the bathroom door just in case I got scared again." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to be a veil, I want to be a heart." Even Cassandra's lawyers faltered. Daniel tried not to cry, gripping the edge of the table as Luna was escorted down, pebbles clutched like a badge of courage. Outside the courtroom, Cassandra sat silent. Her hands trembled for the first time. Daniel's victory in court felt short-lived. The judge ordered a full custody review, but in the interim, Luna would remain in his care. Cassandra was granted supervised visits, though she didn't immediately schedule one. She disappeared. 2 days turned into a week, then a second. Janine warned him, "She's not giving up, she's just repositioning." And she was right. A strange man appeared at the bookstore one afternoon, a sharply dressed investigator asking questions about Daniel's finances, personal history, even his late wife's death. It didn't add up. Daniel contacted Dr. Myers, the child therapist, who had also noticed strange inconsistencies in Luna's stories. "She talks about being locked in her room," Myers said, "about people who watched her but not her mother, almost like Cassandra was absent." Daniel dug deeper. With the help of Janine's contacts, they uncovered sealed court documents, custody disputes between Cassandra and her ex-husband. But there was more. A former nanny came forward under anonymity. She barely saw Luna. The girl was raised by staff. Cassandra was either traveling or in meetings, and when Luna acted out, she was isolated for days. Daniel felt sick. The image of Cassandra Vale, doting mother, was a facade. And perhaps she'd never even meant to report Luna missing. She was afraid the truth would come out, Janine said grimly, and now it has. Daniel knew what he had to do, expose her, but it would come at a cost. The hearing room was packed. Press, attorneys, and the Child Welfare Board all crammed in to hear the final arguments. But Daniel wasn't waiting for them to make their decision based on old assumptions. He had brought proof. Janine began by recapping the court's findings, Luna's preference, Daniel's demonstrated care, and the emotional trauma associated with Cassandra. Then she called their surprise witness, the nanny. Disguised in sunglasses, she spoke through tears and hesitation, describing in harrowing detail how Luna had once begged not to be left alone in a dark room again, how Cassandra dismissed concerns, how the girl was more a trophy than a daughter. Gasps rippled through the room. Next came the recordings, private audio from Cassandra's recent phone call, inadvertently recorded during a press interview. Her voice could be heard. "Let him keep her for now. I've got PR issues to clean up first." Then laughter. The judge sat stone-faced. Cassandra's attorney tried to object, but the damage was done. Daniel was called to speak last. He didn't use notes. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't chase cameras. I just found a scared little girl and tried to help, and it turns out she's mine. That doesn't change what I did. It only deepens it." He looked at Luna sitting beside Eli in the gallery, drawing quietly. "She's not a brand. She's not leveraged. She's a child, and all I've ever wanted was for her to feel loved." The judge recessed for an hour. When she returned, her voice was steady. "In light of the evidence, I am granting full residential custody of Luann Vale, hereby Luann Hart, to Mr. Daniel Hart. Supervised visitation rights will remain available to Ms. Vale, contingent upon compliance with parenting education and psychological evaluation." Cassandra didn't protest. She stood, nodded, and walked out without a word. Daniel sat back in stunned silence as Luna ran to him and hugged him tightly. "I'm staying," she whispered. He nodded. "You're home now." Word of the verdict spread quickly. By the next morning, local newspapers ran the headline, "Bookstore Father Wins Custody of Billionaire's Daughter." National networks picked it up before noon. Overnight, Daniel became a symbol, not of victory over power, but of quiet strength, of compassion that defied wealth and influence. Inside the bookstore, things remained grounded. Luna sat on her usual pillow in the reading corner, coloring beside Eli as Daniel refilled shelves. The sun poured through the front window, illuminating the soft dust floating in the air, giving the whole place a golden glow. He'd kept the sign on the door flipped to "Closed" for one more day, wanting just a little more peace before the curious crowds and cameras returned. There was a knock at the door, not the media, not customers, Cassandra. Daniel opened the door without a word. She stood in flat shoes for once, dressed down in soft beige, a folder tucked under one arm. "I won't stay long," she said. "Just wanted to give you these." She handed over the folder. Inside were legal documents, formal consent forms for Luna's last name change, a notarized apology, and a handwritten letter in Luna's name. I talked with my therapist, Cassandra said. She says if I truly want to be part of Luna's life, it has to start with honesty. Daniel nodded slowly. I didn't mean to be a monster, she continued, but I know I became one. Somewhere along the way, I lost what mattered. You can still find it, he said gently, but it's going to take time. Cassandra looked past him at Luna through the window. I hope she forgives me one day. Daniel watched her walk away, alone this time, not surrounded by lawyers or guards or flashing cameras. That night he sat down with Luna and read her the letter. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, she just listened, then whispered, maybe one day she can come for dinner. And just like that, healing had begun. Spring arrived quietly like a whisper of warmth in the wind. The bookstore reopened, not with fanfare, but with familiar faces and gentle smiles. Daniel added a new section in the children's corner, Luna's Picks, where she and Eli curated weekly collections of stories about bravery, belonging, and discovery. Life settled into rhythm. Eli and Luna walked to school together each morning. Daniel made lunch and helped with homework each night. They spent weekends at the beach, building sandcastles and flying kites, or curled up in the shop during rainy afternoons, reading until they dozed off. One morning Eli asked, can she really stay forever? Daniel looked at them, Luna hugging Pebbles as she brushed her teeth, Eli brushing his wild hair with exaggerated frustration, and smiled. She's not staying, he said. She lives here now. This is home. The final adoption papers came through in early June. Luann Vale officially became Luann Hart. They celebrated quietly. Pancakes for dinner, a campfire in the backyard. Daniel read them both the same bedtime story he had read the first night Luna came into their lives, The Little Prince. As the kids drifted off to sleep, Luna stirred. Daddy, she murmured. Yes, sweetheart. I remember now. I used to feel alone all the time, but now I don't feel lost anymore. Daniel gently kissed her forehead. You're found, Luna. You're exactly where you belong. A year passed. The world kept spinning, the headlines faded, and Windmere Bay returned to its sleepy charm. But within the walls of Heart and Pages, life had changed forever. The store expanded, with help from local donations and a quiet but generous grant from an anonymous source. Daniel suspected Cassandra. He built a larger reading space and hosted weekly literacy programs. Parents brought their children to see The Bookstore Family Who Changed Everything. Daniel published a children's book titled Pebbles and the Storm, inspired by Luna's journey. It became a surprise bestseller, not for its prose, but its heart. Cassandra came by once a month now. Supervised visits turned into family dinners. She was still sharp, still composed, but softer. She brought books instead of gifts, and for the first time, she asked questions instead of giving instructions. She even helped Luna plant a garden behind the shop. One summer evening, Daniel stood outside watching Eli and Luna chase fireflies. Cassandra sat nearby, sipping tea. She calls you Dad, she said. Daniel nodded. And I am. Cassandra smiled faintly, and somehow I'm grateful for that. As twilight settled in, the four of them sat on the porch together, different paths, different lives, now converging in peace. Family wasn't what Daniel expected. It was better. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And as Luna leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Can we read Pebbles again tonight?" Daniel smiled. Always.